Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome back to MI6 The Merchandise Vault. I'm your host, The Collector, and this week we have my fourth book review of Ian Fleming's novels, which, as you can see, is Diamonds Are Forever. We also have my obligatory black cat, by the looks of it, once again, who is Spark out because she's probably bored senseless of hearing my drony old voice, but hence why I've got a cup at, lubricate the old vocals. And excuse me, we are going to get into book number 4. Good morning. So, Diamonds Are Forever. Quite a lot of similarities to the book. Similarities to the book, it is the book. Quite a lot of similarities to the movie in parts, maybe just in a different kind of way. But as always, it's like, you know, what is it? So that it's 25 chapters and it's 276 pages, so but almost 30 odd pages less than Moonraker. And it kind of starts off kind of a bit like a nature program. I know that's going to sound daft, but it all starts in the desert, and it's essentially a fight between a scorpion and a beetle, and all of a sudden, you know, there's an individual there who basically ends up picking up a rock and killing the scorpion once it had killed the beetle, and that's suddenly broken up by the approach of a helicopter, and the helicopter lands. An exchange is made for a package of diamonds. The person was not killed, unlike where Winton Kid killed Dr. Tynan, if I remember rightly, and just the name, whether it's a code name, is Silito. So no identification, so a bit of a mystery as to what Silito or who Silito is. And it turns out that this is the beginning of the pipeline of diamonds being snuck out of North Africa. Well, not North Africa, just Africa in general. MI6 approach to investigate with the assistance and at the request, I believe, of the Americans. So there's a meeting in London. MI6's diamond expert is called Jacoby. He gives the briefing on the smuggling operation as they understand it. They've predicted the next phase. The diamonds are currently in London, and Emma's arranged for Bond to replace the courier. More on him in a moment. But this part of the operation in London is through a company called the House of Diamonds. And because it's in London at this point, the nice thing is that Bond is back in touch with his old pal Valance from Scotland Yard, Ronnie Valance. Sounds a bit of a London gangster about a London policeman or police official. And Valance gives Bond the lowdown that he's replacing Peter Franks. All adds up. His contact is going to be one Miss Tiffany Case. Adds up, like the movie. But actually, the difference being from the movie is that because Bond in the books has got a facial scar, and he is known to smirch and the KGB to have a scar down his face, down the one cheek. But he spends about the best part of an hour in makeup, or and to disguise that scar tissue. So he learns more about the House of Diamonds. That's it. And the front man that runs the operation is a chap called Rufus B. Say. But they're absolutely convinced that it's just a fraud, and the briefing continues with a Sergeant Dagverts who gives them some more information about the New York contact that then these diamonds are going to be passed on to, and that person in New York is a chap called Michael Tree, aka Shady Tree. And this Shady Tree is no comedian in Las Vegas, let me tell you. So Bond, as pre-arranged as Peter Franks, goes to meet Tiffany Case in London. They have the exchange about how it's going to go down and how it plays out, whether it goes well or whether it doesn't. Bond leaves. A quarter of an hour after Bond leaves, Case is on the phone. She goes to a public phone box outside the front of her hotel, and she rings this number, and the person that she's ringing is somebody called ABC. It's as simple as that. 3 letters. So another mystery individual. Turns out that this whole thing is run overall by the Spangs, 2 twin brothers, and they've worked out that actually Rufus B. Say is actually Jack Spang. His brother is Serafimo Spang, and I think I've got that right. Renowned. I think I've pronounced that name correct. Serafimo Bond. Serafimo Spang. Goodness me. And then the whole thing is known as the Spangled Mob. So Bond catches a flight to the US via Shannon in Ireland, where he takes part in some local Irish cuisine. Upon arriving in New York, he finally gets to meet Shady Tree. Again, the whole red-headed thing. Shady Tree is red-headed and actually a hunchback. But completely professional, and pays Bond for the successful delivery of the diamonds of the $5,000 promised. But he will be paid in full, but in a very kind of around the houses kind of way, so it doesn't arouse suspicion as to he arrived with X amount in the country, yet all of a sudden he's got 5k in his pocket. But anyway, Bond ends up leaving Shady Tree, goes back, and who should be waiting for him but one Felix Leiter. And like before, unlike working for the CIA because of what happened to him in the Live and Let Die book, he now has left the service and is working for Pinkerton's detective agency, which is kind of like a nice sort of reminder that, about the book The Hook and the Eye. Because of how this is written, I'm really tempted to read that book now, but that will be for another time and another conversation. And because Felix has been kind of working the same case from a different angle, They end up sharing a meal. They have a few drinks. Leiter's giving him the full story of Tiffany Case. Very different to the movie Tiffany Case. She's a very tortured soul. And Leiter's just very kind of warm and being thoughtful about his good buddy from Britain. Bond goes on then to meet Case. They have dinner. Bond does a little bit of digging, or in a subtle kind of way. And as he's doing that, Bond kind of gets under Case's skin, and she kind of softens towards him. Cheers. And then they part ways for a while, because Bond is going to Saratoga, whereas Case is heading to Las Vegas. So with her out the way, that allowed Bond and Leiter to travel up to Saratoga together. He reads up on all the workings of horse racing, because it's a big horse racing thing. He settles in to his hotel, and day one of the racing, there's a horse called Shy Smile. That's who he's been told to put the bets on to be able to get his $5,000 without suspicion. But Felix sets it up for the plot to fail, because Bond feels like he's just sat on his hands, not getting any further into how this Spangled Mob outfit is working, smuggling the diamonds from Africa to the US. The next chapter, it's about the Perpetuities race commentary, and it is like watching the TV, watching a race on the TV. It's that well written, absolutely brilliant writing. So he's purposely managed to get that race thrown and Shy Smile not winning, because because Leiter bribes the jockey. So the jockey wants his money, but he wants to be paid at a place of his choosing, and he chooses to get the load of this: the Acme mud and sulphur baths. I mean, you can imagine the stench. And it goes into this part where you kind of are covered, literally covered. But it's funny because they're the sign at the front door, it says, "Let your armpits become your charm pits." I mean, what a chat up philosophy that is. And the jockey, whose name is Tinglings, he goes through this mud bath, but you actually lay in a coffin and they pour the mud in. That must be so claustrophobic, because you also then have the lid of the coffin closed. I mean, this is something they should put in a future movie, because it's, as disgusting as it sounds, it is proper creepy, that. So that's something I wouldn't mind seeing in a future movie. But all of a sudden, two individuals burst into this, I should say, company, and it turns out to be Winton Kid. But the strange thing about Winton Kid is they're wearing hoods, so you don't actually get to see them initially. Where are we? I've lost my point. Although there is a moment where one's got like a bit of long silvery straggling hair, because Bond follows Tingling, and he ends up getting in a coffin. So they burst in once Bond's already in, and so one's got silvery hair, and the other one has got like a huge wart on his thumb. So they basically, because Tingling's trapped, they go to proceed because they either know he's thrown the race, or basically he's let he's let Spangs down. They basically almost drown him, and disfigure him, even more hot mud and God knows what. But then one of the staff members then help get him out, and they go away and they say that's a lesson, that'd be a lesson to you, sort of thing. This all gets back. Bond gets out. He gets back to Felix. Felix puts him in touch with this cab driver by the name of Ernie Curio, who plays a great cover support for Bond because of, so he's not being tailed. He'll just say, "Oh, you can book us for days ahead or for the whole day, and we can just hang around," sort of thing, as to not sort of arouse suspicion. This is when he's left, like I say, the Acme Mud and Sulphur baths. He then proceeds to Vegas, and he checks in at the Tiara Hotel, where he's been instructed to go. At the Tiara, as Bond settled in, it turns out that the final part, having to redo the payment because the horse race was a disaster, Case pays Bond off as a professional croupier at blackjack. So that's all done and dusted, and yet there's still nothing from the Spangs higher up. So Bond decides, do you know what, I'm going to push my luck, and he goes to the roulette wheel, and as he's pushing his luck, he gets his first glimpse at Serafimo Spang, all kind of like dressed in purple and very, very flamboyantly. But Serafimo Spang's kind of a very interesting individual because, it's very late on into the book that you sort of come across him. It's all about the first bit of Rufus Beesay and Shady Tree. But things really take a turn, and he has as Bond's pushing his luck more, and he gets back with he gets back in his cab. He speaks to Ernie Curio again, and Curio gives him a whole rundown. He knows the operation massively, so he tells Bond that Spang has got a Wild West town of his own, private land, and it's actually called Spectreville. So this made me laugh, because I thought, well, this must be where Eon had got their thought for their organisation. They weren't going to use Smersh because that was an active kind of thing. So they came up, I think that's where they came up with Spectre. It's got to be, hasn't it? It's got to be. But anyway, as Ernie's parting this knowledge, they've realised that there's two cars pursuing them. Ernie, he gets injured, shot. The two thugs have knocked Bond out, and Ernie out rather, at some kind of drive-through thing. Yeah, at the drive-through. They leave Ernie for dead. They take Bond to Spectreville, and the next time that Bond lays eyes on Serafimo Spang, he's dressed like a gunslinger. He sounds a very, very extravagant character. And Tiffany Case, who's also at Spectreville, is dressed like a mole, a Western mole. Clearly Bond's cover is blown from London by the mysterious ABC, and now that Serafimo Spang knows this, he turns to Winton Kid and tells them to put their boots on. And you think, what on earth do you mean? Put your foot, what are you putting football boots on for? But they essentially proceed to kick Bond like a football until he actually becomes unconscious. When he's stirred from his unconscious state, he quickly realises that he's on a handcart, an old-fashioned rail handcart. Tiffany Case has managed to get him out from where he was being held, and with his help, as he's stirring, start to make their escape down the railway track. Obviously, a little bit of time has passed, and the Spangs have realised they're not there, they're gone. Spang has his own locomotive, flamboyant, lavish locomotive, and goes and proceeds to hightail it after them on the railway. They've run out of they're basically running out of fuel, or have run out of fuel, and they'd not long passed some points which they switch. So as Serafimo comes charging by, the train actually derails into essentially like a cliff face, and ending up killing Serafimo. But you look at it and it's like Case is the hero in that, because it was her that came up with the idea to go back and switch the tracks. So Case ended up saving not just only her life, but Bond's life as well. Huge explosion, and as they make their way across the desert, there's a car finally coming along the road. As luck would have it, it's Felix Leiter, and he picks them both up. He drives them to safety and gets medical services, and then both to the airport. Thankfully, Ernie Curio survived, because the way he's written, he's just a really likeable character, and he kind of, if you've ever, well, sadly he's no longer with us, but if he was ever to have been put into actor form, the guy that I had in mind was Ernest Borgnine of Airwolf fame and Tower Inferno, or no, I don't know if he was in the Tower Inferno, but certainly the Poseidon Adventure. That kind of stocky guy with a likeable smiley face, but you know he's capable. He'd have been brilliant for this role. They then put, after they've had their flight, Bond and Case are, like in the movie, put on a ship. But as it turns out, from the description in the book, Winton Kit are also on the boat. So they were then obviously not killed in the train crash. There are cables sent to and from London. Cables gone to the House of Diamonds, cables gone to MI6, unbeknownst to each. But it turns out that Winton Kid are only to kill Tiffany only and take Bond alive. Whilst all this is going on, during the voyage, Bond and Tiffany Case swap their backstories, learn a bit more about each other, and then it becomes apparent that there's like a daily betting thing going on the ship, where it says, depending on conditions, what will the ship's daily mileage be? So the Highfield was 720, sorry, the low field was 720 and the high field 739. And these two individuals, whilst this particular day was going on, they were betting against the obvious, and they realised when Bond and Case were leaving, because of the kind of confusion it was causing, noticed one of them sucking his thumb because of a boil on it, which was triggering some stuff with Bond, but at the time didn't register the seriousness of it. They go back to their cabin. One thing leads to another, if you know what I mean. And all of a sudden, Bond's disturbed rather, from his sleep, because he ended up going back to. No, she ended up going back to her cabin, and there's an urgent fax from London. He's disturbed from his slumber. He goes to see Tiffany. She's gone, and then it dawns on him about the thumb sucking that it was Wint and Kidd. So he knows they're on the boat. So he works out from his workings of the ship's, I think it was from the ship's manifest, or I can't recall now. But anyway, Kidd and Wint have Tiffany Case in their room. As it turns out, it's the deck and room immediately below Bond's cabin. So he goes on the outside of the boat and has an altercation with Kidd because the porthole was open, so he got through. Ended up having an altercation with Kidd, sent him out of the porthole window, and actually no, there's a bit of a gunfight, and yes, he shoots Kidd, or did he? I can't remember, but anyway, he ends up going out the porthole and definitely shoots Wint, because he makes that a fake killing, like a suicide. Because every now and again they do say there's bodies got in the sea, people committing suicide or whatever. So he sets it up that Wint shot Kidd, and creates like a crime scene. Bond ends up with this altercation having some rib injuries, and Case is okay. Once it's done, they leave the scene. Like I say, it's set up like a suicide. And when they get back to London, it turns out Valance and the team their end have discovered that Jack Spang, who we know is Rufus B. Say, turns out to also be the mysterious character of ABC. I'm sure that's a band back in the day, back in the 80s. And he has gone missing. And we all of a sudden end up back at the beginning in the African desert underneath the huge bush tree. Again, the same person is headed to the rendezvous come exchange with the same dentist, because it's a dentist that's doing the diamond smuggling directly from the mines, like in the movie. And it turns out the pilot, because it wasn't really mentioned or hinted at, because the pipeline has been compromised, they're shutting each part down. And the pilot turns out actually to have been Jack Spang. And he kills the dentist. He then realises that he has been tracked, tries to escape in the helicopter, fails. Bond shoots it down, with the help, of the local Freetown Garrison Force, and he uses I'm going to pronounce this right now, Bofors, Bofors gun. I think that's like a twin kind of machine gun type setup. Shoots the helicopter down, and essentially that's how the book ends. He gets a cable to M beforehand, and that's how it finishes. No real tie up with Tiffany. Yeah, it's just Bond taking out Jack Spang. Again, a very different ending. One that I really enjoyed. And these Spangs. Now I know there's been twins in Octopussy with the circus, Mishka and Grishka. But the main villains, if you had two main villains, twins with different traits, so on and so forth, I think that's a really good dynamic. I'd really love to see some twins again. And as we've seen from the past two books, well, actually even three, there's characters that they could use in the movies moving forward. Why not? You know, maybe put them in different organisations or roles. But I think that'd be great. I really, really do, to have characters from the book still, because obviously pretty much all the titles are used, the Fleming titles. Not all of them, but most of them. But yeah, that's Diamonds Are Forever. I'm not going to forget this time around. We have the ISBN, if you wish to use that, and a very, very enjoyable book. Looking forward to the next one, which is no, it's not. It's that one, which is From Russia with Love. We'll see how much there is the same from the movies from the book. But other than that, guys, if you're still awake, I do hope you enjoyed today's episode. Like before, leave a like, a share, a follow, a subscribe, a word of mouth, whatever it is. And I will see you fabulous people, ladies and gentlemen, next weekend. Take care now. Love to you all. Bye now. Oh my God, look at that. It's right there. What's going on? Let's try the killer glasses. It's certainly killing me. See you next weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye now.